Welcome to Sprinkle with Hope podcast with your host, Jason. We have an amazing guest with us today, Roger Butts. He's an engaging speaker, expert in hospital chaplaincy and the emotional turmoil of the COVID pandemic, as well as the importance of spiritual practices with or without organized religion and self-reflection in the time of a pandemic, expertise in centering prayer and other contemplative practices, important practices in a time of burnout among social justice activists in a time of political divisions. So I know that at one point you were a chaplain, right? A hospital chaplain. Can you kind of explain a little bit about what that is for those that aren't familiar with chaplaincy and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I was a hospital chaplain for 7 years and here in Colorado Springs. And I worked at a big Catholic system, and I'm a Unitarian Universalist, so it was very ecumenical and lots of different folks. And a hospital chaplain deals with the spiritual and emotional kinds of issues that patients and staff face. So you know how like the body and the mind and the emotional field is all tied up in health and well-being. You know, if you just prescribe medicines or a course of action without dealing with some of the underlying spiritual issues, you're only getting part of the package. And so we all have our different specialties. But I lived through the COVID thing in a hospital system that had lots of COVID deaths and patients, and learned a lot. I probably shouldn't claim to be an expert on COVID related stuff, but I've seen a lot, and my book indicates, has a couple of chapters where it was so early in the pandemic, people were like, surely somebody can fix this. Somebody has to be able to fix my loved one. And often we couldn't. So it was intense. I've since gone back into parish ministry. So I'm now a minister in Parker, Colorado, which is like the southern edge of Denver. So like you'll see a cow and a housing development and a cow and a housing development. You know, it's like one of those, like it's right on the edge of the Western kind of ranchy life. And then you get a big, huge housing development. So that's what I'm doing now. So back in the parish, I really, like a lot of healthcare workers, I was pretty burned out. I didn't even know it. Yeah. Until it stopped. And then I was able to take a breath. And this is like what trauma is like too, right? It's like, is you finally get through it, you take a breath and you're like, holy cow, holy smokes. Yeah. Good gravy. Whatever your phrase is that you like. I prefer good gravy, but you're free to pick whatever PG-13 phrase you would like.
So Roger, what got you into this type of field of work, the ministry and the parish and all that? What piqued your interest about getting into that?
Thank you for asking. Shane, I grew up in a very religious family in Illinois, but my dad was from North Carolina. And so North Carolina was like this magnet or the center of gravity. And, Southern Baptist, I have two uncles who are Southern Baptist ministers, one of blessed memory. And he had like a little tiny church, and he was a beautiful guy. And then my other uncle is like kind of famous and writes books that sell bunches of copies and has been on Oprah. And so religion was really important to me. Growing up, I would be in the church like when the doors were open. And I still have really good friends from my youth group. But you grow, you mature, you have new experiences. And I went off to college and I was like, I I know I'm not a Southern Baptist or whatever kind of Baptist I was in Illinois. There are like a billion different branches. But I didn't know what I was. So I went to this Methodist minister on campus, and he was really sweet, really nice. And I just peppered the poor dude with like question after question. And he was like, Roger, come, like, you're welcome to come to our Methodist church. There are plenty of people who think like you. He said, it sounds like you're a Unitarian Universalist, and there's a little place down the street. And I was like, all right, I'll go check it out. And I went around this time of year, and they were doing like an eating ritual for indigenous populations that had been exterminated, basically, or genocided. And I was like, I was 21. I was like, yeah, this is my jam. This is my cup of tea. And then I was either going to be Unitarian Universalist, a Quaker, or an Episcopalian. And I was a young adult. This is 100 years ago. And I got on my horse and I went and checked out all those places by candlelight, And I was like, oh, I walked into the Episcopal church and I was like, I do not have enough money for all this right here. I just don't. And then I went to the one Quaker meeting that was like full of 100 people. I mean, 100-year-old people. And they were like, you can be the chair of our board. I'd been there once. You can because I was young, they were like, you are like Jesus, you are going to save us, and it's like, no, I'm not doing that. And then I went to this Unitarian Universalist church, and they had just had a misconduct, like the minister ran off with like the treasurer's wife or something ridiculous like that happens. But they were so open about it. They were so transparent about it. They were so honest about it and upfront about it. Like, no, like, we're going to just do the work to try to figure out what part we played in this. And we're going to do the work to keep going. And so I was really impressed by that. And then they had 2 interim ministers. So in a lot of traditions, I don't know about all traditions, but in a lot of traditions, there's an interim that helps people sort of deal with conflict and before they call their next minister. So the first guy they called was a guy named Clark Dewey Wells from Boston. He was overweight. He was a curmudgeon. He was just like, I don't want to be your friend, blah, 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 blah. And he was just old and crusty, but he could write like mad. He was a beautiful writer. And he loved God and Shakespeare and the Red Sox, and nobody knew in which order, And the next year they had an interim who was like thin and tall and proper and very gentle and had been influenced by Taoism. And he was also a beautiful writer. And I was like, this feels good to me. This feels good to me. So I went into politics for a little while after college. And, that's a contact sport. That is a tough. Now, when I was there, it wasn't as tough as it is now, I don't think. Right now, there's an isolation, there's a divisiveness, there's a kind of you can't be friends across the aisle kind of thing. When I was there, it was a little less so than that. But it was still a contact sport, and you had to be really committed, and you had to really dig in. And I just didn't find my place there. So I wanted to go off to seminary to study how faith communities of whatever kind practice their deepest values in the area of like human rights, human dignity, gay and lesbian rights, anti-poverty, all that stuff. And that's what I did. I went to seminary and then I became a minister, and here I am.
That's quite the story.
And I love now I might have enough money to to be Episcopalian, but I think I found my place. My little small world is like
Yeah.
super tiny, and I'm in like a little group in that tiny denomination that is even smaller. So they're stuck with me. I don't know what else.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they don't have any other choice, right?
Yeah. It's like, wait, you're a Unitarian Universalist and a Christian. Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm like, that's what I do.
So
But
talk. Oh, go ahead.
it's like I'm my 17-year-old son the other day was like, his friend asked him, like, both of your parents are ministers? And he was like, yeah, like, please, God, deliver me,
Yeah.
But he was like, and his friend was like, what kind? And he was like, my mom's Christian and my dad, I think, is everything.
That is everything.
Yes.
That's great.
That is great.
Anyway,
That's funny. So tell me a little bit about, because we've brought up, meditation with others in the past, and meditation and prayer, they kind of go hand in hand. So talk about that just a little bit, maybe some of your methods and how you use prayer and meditation to kind of help bring you back to center and help ground you a little bit. Because I think those things are helpful, especially right now,
oh my
where
gosh,
we're
critical.
it's super critical. So talk to me a little bit about meditation and prayer and how you interject that in your life.
Yeah, I had a really ambivalent relationship to prayer for a long time, and I had to come to a place where I was like, I don't know how it works. I don't know what it's for exactly, but I'm going to do it. And you know, when you're interested in human rights, for instance, so I was an organizer against the death penalty, and you look at injustice and you look at suffering and you look at all of these things. It's hard to say, I believe, and this is just my theology, nobody, I'm not
Sure.
asking anybody else to, but it's hard to believe that there is a personal God who's going to intervene and come in and swoop down, and save the day. And so I had to really struggle and wrestle. And I read a poet the other day who said, prayer is a practice of panic in some ways, because you don't know if anybody's listening. You don't know if anything's going to respond. You don't know what's going to happen. And I thought, that's really pretty good, But what I do after all this year of struggle and wrestling, I really like the biblical figure Jacob, isn't it Jacob, who like fights and wrestles until he gets a blessing. I'm deep into that metaphor and that image. So after all this wrestling and struggle, I came to a thing called centering prayer. And centering prayer comes out of the Catholic monastic tradition. And it's very similar to Buddhist meditation. So what you do is you sit down and you think of a sacred word. And the sacred word is, it can't be super long, but it can be like Jesus or hope or love or peace or whatever, Buddha, Mary. And that is your sign, your symbol of your agreement with your God, that you're going to just stay open and let God do whatever God is going to do inside of you. So it's like kenosis, it's like that self-emptying. And so you sit, and sometimes you ring a little bell, and you sit for 20 minutes, and you're not meditating on that word. That's a different kind of prayer. You can do that. That's a different prayer. But when you start saying, oh my gosh, are the Jazz going to win tonight? And should I put $17 on them on the over under? Which I don't even know if that's, I don't even know if that's illegal in Utah. But you're like, oh, okay. Here's my grocery list for the day. You gently return to your sacred word and open up that space. Open up that space again. And so you do that for 20 minutes. And at the end, you say the Lord's Prayer or whatever you want and read a psalm and you're done. And then you just pray that that thread of peacefulness will stay with you throughout the day. So a nun said to Father Thomas Keating, he was up in Snowmass outside of Aspen, and he's one of the people who founded this. And this nun said to him, oh my God, Father, she probably didn't say, oh my God, Father, but she said, Father, a million times I get distracted. And he said, thank God, a million times to practice letting go, right? That's centering prayer. It's like a million times to practice letting go. And it's not like you're like beating yourself up for screwing up and thinking about your grocery list. Like a feather, placing a feather on a pillow, you just gently return to that sacred word. And that for somebody as like silly and goofy and ADD-ish as me, it's a really good practice. It really helps me stay grounded.
Yeah, I think that's really good information.
It worked for me.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. So you shared with
my
us.
wife. I will tell you this before I go on. My wife's practice, she's doing it right now. My wife is a Congregationalist minister, United Church of Christ. Her practice, her prayer practice, is she takes our black lab, and we live next to this really big, huge open space. And she walks for an hour and a half with the dog. And as she's walking, she's praying. As she's walking, she's praying. And so everybody's different, but
yeah,
centering prayer is what I've landed on.
That's really cool. I was just thinking as you were sharing how your wife does it, everybody is different. They just find their thing, how it works for them.
Exactly. And that's the beauty, right? Is that God has made us all like into crazy different human persons. And, when I went to Appalachian, I will tell you this, when I went to Appalachian State from Illinois, it was 1,000 miles away. And, I wasn't poor, but I was pretty lower middle class. And and God only knows how this happened, but there was some kind of secondhand store, and I found a laundry bag that said Brigham Young University. And that was me trying to connect with you guys.
Yeah. Connected.
Done.
That's awesome. So a little before we came on, you shared with us that you have written a book. I don't remember the title. It was Seeds of Devotion. Yeah, Seeds of Devotion.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that. What's the premise of that, and why did you write that book and so forth?
Yeah, I've been a minister for 20 years. And over that time, from literature, hospital chaplaincy, parish ministry, the world's great sacred literature, I've landed on some favorite stories. And, I'm really convinced that stories are everything. And so I had a friend who is a publisher, and she's been after me for years to write. And finally I saw on something like email or somewhere that her company was actively seeking. It was COVID, so there were fewer dinner parties or fewer theater options or whatever. The symphony was down. And so I was like, maybe I could write a book. And I started compiling all these stories. And then it came out to like 48 stories. And I was like, hey, that's almost like a weekly contemplation,
Mhm.
And but here's the formula, it's not much of a formula, but here's the idea. Stuff happens. Sometimes the stuff is great and sometimes it sucks. But I've seen the bumper sticker, so I know that stuff happens. So
That's right.
right.
Yeah.
And amen.
Yeah.
And then you have to somehow come to a place of meaning and purpose and faithfulness around that, and figure out what is it trying to teach you, right? Because the Buddhists tell you that the teacher is going to come around until you learn the lesson.
Yep.
Yep.
So stuff happens, and then so that is the story part of my book. And then if you can have a prayerful orientation toward that, which is to say, what are you trying to teach me? What can I learn? What am I doing? And who am I being called to be right now and do? If you can have a prayerful orientation towards that, then you can come to meaning and healing and restoration and all that stuff. And so the second part of the book, each chapter has a prayer. And it's an inner, it's like open prayer, but so you story, prayer, and then over time, if you have a prayerful orientation to what's happened, you can begin, if you can get silent enough and quiet enough and intentional enough, you can begin to ask the right questions to really bring it home. So that's the format of the book: story, prayer, reflection, questions. I can read one of the prayers if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be
go
great.
for it.
So this is after a story about Thomas Merton having an epiphany. Thomas Merton was a Catholic monk. He lived in Kentucky. He just wanted to be with God, and he lived in a tool shed like a mile from the monastery. He was like, just get me some silence, get me off on my own. But every once in a while he'd have to go to the world, out of the monastery. And he was at Louisville on 4th and Walnut. And I don't know what year this was. I can't even say, early 60s, something like that. And he was in a busy commercial district. All these people were walking by, and he was like, I wish I could stop each one of them and tell them how beautiful they are and that they shine bright as the sun. How can I feel separate from them? We are one. We were made to be one. So after that story, here's the prayer. You are loved. Go to the altar of your life in the place known only to you and your God. Go there like it's a monastic cell, the kind the Desert Fathers insisted was all you need to learn everything you need to learn. Go there and just be quiet for long enough to hear something. Maybe at first the something you hear will be nonsense or nothing much to write home about. But soon the message will come, clear as a waterfall, clear as the morning sun. You are loved, you are worthy, you are precious, you are enough. You are the beloved and the beautiful, and you are enough. Go, be quiet, and know. Amen. So that's kind of how I write and what I do.
Yeah, that's, what, Shane and I say that very thing to all of we almost word for word, we tell our listeners that they are loved, they are worthy, they're worth it, they're enough. We say that almost every episode.
Don't steal my poem. Man.
Yeah.
Jason, I see you. Yeah. I mean, isn't that, and what would the world be like if we stopped like Thomas Merton wanted to?
Yeah.
Couldn't, obviously,
Right.
but what would it be like if we stopped and just told everybody that they're beautiful, that they're enough, and they're worthy, and they told everybody else, and we just had this world of gratitude and affirmation and love and peace.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. I'm glad you tell folks that. Keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We won't stop.
No.
This has been a great conversation, and I love talking about these kinds of things because I love, being open to everybody and really bringing love and unity together instead of divisiveness. And so this has been a great conversation for me. So right near the end of our podcast, Shane and I, we like to do a thing called the double down dose. So it's 2 final questions. Exactly.
Let's go. Do it. Bring it.
I'll ask one, and then Shane will ask the follow-up question.
Do I get a third question?
Absolutely.
So I can find out about the Baylors.
Yeah.
Bellers.
Ballers, yeah.
Ballers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can absolutely ask a third one to that. So, so the first question is what is your definition of hope, or how would you define hope?
Yeah, hope is important. Hope is the key to all of this. Hope is like faith. Hope is like faith. You can't quite see it, can't quite name it, but you know it, and it invests you in the future. It invests you in the future of yourself, others, and the earth, and you find your path by grounding yourself in what's possible, that sense, or even impossible, that sense that I can contribute my piece in my lane, in my little corner of the world, and I can make my poo corner the best poo corner possible, with like lots of honey jars and being nice to Eeyore, and just doing it, and recognizing that is that sense of agency and power is crucial for the life abundant. And so that's how I would say hope works, is that you've got the power, claim the power, and do what you can to make your corner a little better.
It's great. Very good. So we love talking about hope, and the second part of the double down dose today, it's a little different sometimes, but we came up with an acronym, HOPE, heart, overcome, passion, and enough. And the three of us, like you read in your prayer, that we tell people often that they're enough. So let's say that we've just told somebody that they're enough, and they say, but what does that mean? How would you describe them being enough?
Mm-hmm. I would say, tell me about a time when you thought you weren't going to get through, when you thought you were like at the end of your path, your lane, and you saw in yourself, not at the time maybe, but now looking back at it, the power and the resilience to get through. Tell me about that time, and tell me what you learned, and tell me who you are based on that strength and resilience.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I love that. Love that. So if you have a third part of the double down dose, you wanted to ask us a question,
we'll call it the triple down dose.
Go
I know
for
it's
it.
a triple down. What caused you to want to do a podcast about hope?
It's a great question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason. You'll start.
Yeah. So really about a year and a half ago, actually a little more than that, almost 2 years ago now, I came to Shane and talked to him about starting a podcast. And we were thinking about subject matters to talk about. And Shane and I, we've always been positive people, trying to say uplifting things to ourselves, say uplifting things to others, provide that hope. And when we were thinking about what to do our podcast on, we just felt like with everything that was going on, we could provide that sprinkle of hope to the world and brighten somebody's day.
That's right.
Every single week.
That's right.
For the last year and a half, Shane and I have been able to do that. And that's really where it kind of stemmed from, was us just living our lives the way that we were and having hope and positivity always around us, and just wanting to share that with others to help lift them out of a difficult or a trial that they're going through at the time.
Yeah. So for me, this actually started a few years ago. Even before we started our podcast, we'd kind of talked about something similar, but it just didn't feel timely. But when Jason came and approached me this time around and said, "Hey, do you want to start a podcast?" I didn't even hesitate. I just, yep, let's do it. It just felt right. It felt timely. It feels like the world needs to hear not just thoughts from us, but guests like you, and we're just building and uplifting as many people as we can. If it's one person, that's one person that we've helped when otherwise we couldn't. So we're having a blast doing it, and truly we feel like we really are helping people in the world to see a different outlook on their life. And we've gotten some feedback from people who are going through really tough stuff that just, it warms my heart to hear them share what we're sharing with them has really helped them in their life. So it's been more than worth it.
It's huge. It's huge. And I see you guys, I know you're both into sports, and you got that like look about you, like you might work out every once in a while. But this idea of sprinkled with hope, it's like the image that comes to my mind, because I work in images, is like fairy dust. So you're like Tinkerbell, both of you are like Tinkerbell, just spreading a little fairy dust of hope around. I love it. Good.
And
people
can't get away from that fairy dust. It just hits them and it's all over them then.
Well, it sure can be helpful, huh? It can
really
be a foundational thing. Yep. It can when somebody doesn't feel like the foundation is there, that hope can really sustain them.
Yep.
Would you like a final blessing, gents?
Yes,
absolutely.
Please.
Let's do it.
This is after a chapter called The Death of the Buddha, where everybody is like, what are we going to do now? Like they're all around him as he's dying. And like, what are we going to do? And he's like, I've done my thing. It's your turn. Right. And it's like, you become a light.
Yeah.
So here's the blessing. May life surprise you today. May a sense of grace come out of nowhere in the middle of your daily tasks. May a sense of peace find you in the unlikeliest of places. May a sense of courage and renewal find you. And may God's love surround you. And may a gentleness, a returning quietness, and a restoring stillness be with you now and always. A restorative wholeness is yours to claim and embrace. And may faith, hope, and love be your constant companions. God bless your day. Amen.
Awesome.
Roger, thank you so much. That's awesome. This has been a great discussion. Thank you so much.
Get his book.
Seeds of Devotion, wherever books are sold.
There you go. Roger, this has been
guys,
fantastic.
Thank you so much. What a blessing to come across you and meet you, and keep blessing the world, man. Keep blessing the world.